Once upon a time in a faraway land, there was a poor shepherd. He lived in a little cottage with his son and daughter. They were very poor, but they had each other, and that's all that mattered. But sadly, the old shepherd fell very sick. He knew he wouldn't get better, so he called his son and daughter to his bedside. "My children," he said in a weak voice, "I'm very sick and I'm afraid I won't make it. I'm very sorry for leaving you like this, but I have nothing to leave you. All I have is this small house and my 3 sheep. Please, my children, divide them however you wish. But please, I beg of you, never quarrel over my inheritance." They were standing by their father's bed, holding his hands. Tears were streaming down their faces. The old shepherd had passed away during the night and his funeral had just taken place. Now his son and daughter were left alone to divide their inheritance. His son stood by the door ready to go. He looked at his sister and asked, "Dear sister, would you prefer the house or the sheep?" "Oh, brother," she replied softly, "I'd prefer the small house. It's just a small cottage, but at least it's a roof over my head, and I can take care of myself and my children." The son smiled gently and nodded his head. He knew that his sister needed the house more than he did. So without a moment's hesitation, he said, "Then you shall have it." And so the brother agreed willingly and gave her the house and the 3 sheep. Then he took a deep breath, slung his bag over his shoulder, and set off down the path that led away from his childhood home. Every bend in the path brought him closer to the unknown, to a future he could only imagine. But with each step, his resolve grew stronger. He had his wits, he had his strength, and he had the memory of his father's love to guide him. He walked past fields of waving grain, over babbling brooks, and through shady groves. And all the while the 3 sheep trotted happily in front of him, their bells tinkling in the breeze. As the day wore on, the sun climbed higher in the sky, and the heat shimmered on the horizon. The path stretched out before him, a ribbon of gray winding through the green. Still the shepherd walked, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he was ready to face whatever challenges came his way. He was a shepherd, after all, and shepherds are known for their courage, their resilience, and their ability to lead their flock to safety. And so he walked on, guided by the memory of his father's love and the tinkling bells of his 3 loyal sheep. Once upon a time in a village, there was a poor man who earned his living as a shepherd. He took care of a flock of sheep, and his life was simple and quiet. One day, the shepherd decided to take his 3 fattest sheep to the market and sell them, so he could buy some much-needed supplies for himself and his family. On his way to the market, he walked along a wide path in the countryside, and his 3 sheep followed closely behind him. The shepherd walked slowly, lost in thought, dreaming of the good fortune he would have if he sold his sheep for a high price. As he walked, he came across a deep pit filled with water. Thinking quickly, he tied 2 of his sheep together and made them cross the pit one by one. After the second sheep had crossed, he untied the rope and led the remaining sheep across. After walking for many hours, the shepherd finally arrived at the market, but he soon realized that luck wasn't on his side. The people at the market weren't interested in buying his sheep, and he had no choice but to make the long journey back home without selling any of his animals. Throughout the trip, the shepherd and his sheep went without food and drink, and by the time they got home, they were all exhausted and hungry. Determined not to give up, the shepherd packed up again and set off on another journey, hoping to sell his sheep somewhere else. He continued to walk along the wide country roads, and after a few days, he came across a large house surrounded by a beautiful garden. Just as he was about to leave, he heard the sound of barking and saw 3 large dogs coming towards him. The dogs were black, and each one seemed bigger than the last. The princess became terrified when she heard the driver's criminal threat. She was deeply pained, for he was trying to force her to lie, to change the truth, and to speak falsely. She felt she had no choice but to promise that she would say it was the driver who killed the beast and saved her life. But deep inside, she resolved never to marry him. He was a traitor, unworthy of trust, a liar with no sense of honesty, and he even wanted her to share in his deceit. The carriage returned to the capital with the princess safe and unharmed. Her return, alive and well, was unexpected, and the sultan and his wife were overwhelmed with boundless joy. They embraced their beloved daughter, tears of happiness streaming from their eyes. The Sultan embraced the false savior. The driver ran. The news quickly spread throughout the kingdom. Joy and celebration filled every corner. The black flags that had hung on the palace towers and buildings in mourning for the beloved princess were taken down, and green flags were raised everywhere in celebration of her survival. The Sultan said to the driver, "You didn't only save my daughter's life, you saved every family in this nation from the monster's annual demand. For this, I will reward you handsomely and give you the princess as your wife. Her life now belongs to you." However, the marriage would be postponed for a year, as the princess was still young. The Sultan promised a grand celebration to mark the occasion. The driver thanked the Sultan for this priceless reward, and the Sultan ordered for the driver to be given fine clothes fitting for the future prince and his new status at court. But the poor princess was in turmoil. She couldn't reveal the truth now, as she had given her word to the driver to lie. How could she honor this promise when it was a lie? How could she reveal the true savior, who was now far away on his journey? She was torn, confused, and unable to confide in anyone. She cried bitterly, and no one knew the reason for her sorrow. When the year came to an end, the princess begged her father to delay the wedding another year. He agreed to grant her request. The days passed quickly, and the second year ended. The princess once again threw herself at her father's feet, pleading for one more year, claiming she needed more time to regain her strength and health. The Sultan agreed, and the wedding was postponed again. The princess was greatly relieved, confident that her true savior would return at the end of the third year. Time passed swiftly, and the third year ended like the previous two. But now the princess had no more excuses, and the Sultan set the wedding date. Preparations were made, banners of joy were hung everywhere. Lights illuminated the buildings, musicians played, and the whole capital was abuzz with celebration. On the day of the wedding, a brave young man, unknown to the people of the city, arrived at the capital with 3 black dogs. He saw the joyful decorations and the crowds, and asked about the occasion. He was told that the beloved princess would be marrying the driver who had saved her and the people from the monster. The young man immediately rejected this lie and declared himself the true savior. He told people that it was he who had saved the princess, but no one listened to him. He was arrested and thrown into a prison with iron bars. Inside, the young man sat sadly on a straw mat, reflecting on his misfortune.
Outside the prison,
his 3 dogs barked loudly. The young man called out to his dog Kate, "Come, oh iron cutter, help me escape." Immediately, the large dog leaped to the prison window and began to cut through the iron bars with his glowing teeth. Within moments, he finished and jumped inside to his master. The shepherd escaped through the window with Kate, and all 3 dogs followed him. But the young man was filled with sorrow. The reward would go to the undeserving driver. The princess would marry the liar who falsely claimed to be her savior. Meanwhile, the true hero, the brave shepherd, who had stayed by her side and risked his life, was forgotten. Hungry, the shepherd sat down and asked Semsim, his magical dog, to bring food. Semsim returned shortly with a royal tablecloth embroidered with the Sultan's crest, filled with delicious foods. The shepherd ate until he was full. Then Saba Alel, the protective dog, went to the palace. The Sultan sat at the head of the wedding feast, surrounded by the queen, the princess, the false groom, and the kingdom's nobles. Alel approached the sorrowful princess and gently licked her hand with a look of longing and urgency, as if to say, "The true savior who risked his life to save you and the kingdom is here, as promised after 3 years. It's time for the truth." The princess recognized the black dog immediately and joyfully welcomed him. Her heart filled with happiness, knowing her rescuer had returned and kept his promise. She seized the moment to reveal the truth. She stood up during the feast and told her father and everyone present the entire story from the beginning, detailing how the brave shepherd had stayed with her, protected her, and killed the monster with this very dog by her side. She explained how the driver tried to dissuade the shepherd from accompanying her and later threatened to drown her if she didn't lie, and credit him with the rescue. She explained that her silence and the wedding delays over 3 years were due to her waiting for her true savior to return from his journey. Now that he had, she could no longer remain silent. She boldly declared that the shepherd was the true hero, while the driver was a traitor and liar who had planned to kill her. The Sultan immediately sent an officer to follow the dog and bring the shepherd. When the officer met him, he welcomed him and escorted him to the palace. The Sultan embraced the shepherd, thanked him for his bravery, and the princess greeted him with joy. He was the one who truly saved her. The shepherd didn't need to pull out the monster's fangs that he had kept as proof there was no need for evidence. The princess's testimony was enough, and all those present admired the brave and loyal shepherd. Meanwhile, the false driver turned pale with shame, his face distorted with disgrace as the truth was revealed. He begged the Sultan for forgiveness for his lies and the crime he had planned. Everyone despised him and they nearly attacked him, but the shepherd interceded, asking the Sultan to simply banish him. The Sultan agreed, banished the treacherous driver, and officially named the shepherd the princess's true. The couple sat together and everyone congratulated them. The princess was overjoyed, and this time made no request to delay the wedding. Her delays were only to wait for the true hero, who had finally returned, just as he promised. The shepherd and the faithful princess were married and lived a joyful, peaceful life. The shepherd did not forget his poor sister. He sent a special carriage to bring her to the palace, along with gifts of fine clothes and precious jewels. She arrived and was warmly welcomed by both her brother and the princess. He embraced her with deep affection. He had always remembered her and never forgotten her, not even for a moment. At that moment, one of the three dogs spoke. "Our duty is done. You no longer need us, master. We stayed only to see how you would treat your sister in your days of happiness. We now know you are brave and loyal, and you never forgot her." With that, the three dogs transformed into three birds and flew into the sky. God blessed the shepherd and the princess with a happy life, and his sister shared in their joy and prosperity.